Hello, I'm State Representative Andy Thompson from the 93rd House District. Welcome to Ohio in Focus.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Ohio in Focus, a program that brings state government to you. I'm your host, Mike Ditto. We have with us today State Representative Andy Thompson, who serves the 93rd House District, which includes Guernsey, Monroe, and Noble counties, as well as portions of Washington and Muskingum counties. Representative, thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you, Mike.
So you've had a busy summer and a busy fall, I imagine, back in the district since we're not currently in session. What have you been up to?
Well, meeting with folks, going to county fairs, buying livestock, that's the kind of thing you do during the summertime, but it's a chance to be back with your family and back with your constituents. I know that we had a very productive session in the Ohio House. I'm out there communicating that to people, answering the questions that they have about bills that we have passed and better understanding them and how we think they will improve the economic climate in the state, and also reform some things that needed to be tackled. Really, it's about jobs, jobs, and jobs, and that continues to be the theme, but also education, economic development, oil and gas. There are a lot of things going on in our part of the state which are very encouraging and exciting, frankly.
And on that topic, there's been some recent oil and natural gas discoveries in the Marcellus and Utica Shale. The governor has talked extensively about that for eastern Ohio. What does it mean for your district, and what have your meetings yielded at this point?
Well, I've learned a lot. I thought I knew a lot about it, but there's a lot more to learn because technology is changing so rapidly. The ability to drill is getting to be much more effective. In other words, they can gauge where the oil is going to be, and then their ability to hit those spots is much more successful now. We're blessed because my hometown of Marietta is the home of Marietta College, and Marietta College has an oil and gas program. They have a petroleum engineering program and have for many, many years. So we're uniquely qualified and placed to participate in this shale delivery and discovery and development. And so people are interested about that. People are interested as property owners to know what they can do to participate and whether it'll be a lucrative opportunity for them. We're hearing tremendous sums in terms of monies that are being paid out in terms of lease and royalty payments, maybe a little bit north of where I serve. But that's exciting because as that development continues and it spreads into our district, we're going to unleash a wave of retail opportunity and economic development that's really unprecedented probably since the turn of the last century.
So it's a big deal not only from an economic development perspective, but also for the unemployed in eastern Ohio. Well, what does this all mean for them, and will the opportunities be there for jobs that people seem to think that there will be?
Yeah, I feel very encouraged by that, Mike. I think that initially some of the jobs will be filled by people from out of state just because they require certain training, but it's a great opportunity for us in workforce development because I know, for example, Zane State, which is in Zanesville and also has a branch campus in Cambridge, has a petroleum program. So they've already thought about that. And I spoke this week with our Career Center in Washington County. They're also working now with oil and gas to try and develop programs. And so my job as a legislator is to try and knit that together to make sure that each of the community colleges is actively engaged, and then the career centers as well, because it's a tremendous opportunity for young people maybe that was unanticipated. The other thing that I think it will do is be a magnet to draw talent back to our state. If you think about people who may have had to seek their opportunity elsewhere because it wasn't here in Ohio, now it's going to be here in Ohio. So people who had a petroleum background but also might have had a background in the chemical industry or polymers and other aspects, and again may have had to go to the Gulf Coast or Texas or someplace else, that's going to be happening right here in Ohio. So that's exciting for them. And so as you draw this additional talent back to Ohio, it's going to unleash even more opportunities for the people who have been, I would say, suffering. I mean, Southeast Ohio has been a poor area traditionally, but it's rich in natural resources, and this is a great opportunity for us to turn that economic tide in the right direction.
Speaker Batchelder set up a series of study committees for the summer and fall breaks, and one of them is the Workforce Development Committee, which I know that you're a part of, and you mentioned workforce development as part of our previous conversation just a minute ago. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about the committee and what you've been doing and what has happened with that so far? Yes,
the committee was led by Representative Tim Derrickson, who's from Oxford, over where my daughter goes to college, and I believe you went to college.
That's right,
at Miami
I did.
Too.
Yes,
yes, you did. So it's a fine school. But Tim's a great legislator and a great friend, and he asked me to be part of the workforce development. And workforce development, as we were just talking about, is vitally important in my area. As we respond to new opportunities, as we look at technology and how it's changing the way we work, then we need to get up to speed, and we need to solicit input from people so that we can make the best decisions as legislators to facilitate that. Certainly the universities are involved, certainly the community colleges are involved, and the career centers are involved, and then you have to have participation from the private sector. And I think one of the things that I learned on the committee is where we do that best is when these entities communicate well with the business community. It's all well and good for them to talk with me as a legislator, but I need for them to go out and talk to the community, to the companies, and see what it is they need, and then respond accordingly and try to develop a long-term approach that isn't just kind of hit or miss or spotty, but takes into account that these companies are going to be there for a long time, and so we need to long-term keep replenishing their workforce, because not everybody stays at the same job forever anymore, so they need to keep replenishing as people train and may move on to another job. But we had meetings in several parts of the state. In my area, we had a meeting in Athens. We were over in Middletown. There were meetings also up north in Bowling Green and Lorain County. And I think so we got a good sense across the state about what's common, what we have in common, and what's different about each part of the state. And as we discussed earlier, my state has tremendous opportunities in oil and gas, so we will have to seek unique training in that area. Sure. As I said, Zane State, I believe, has a great program. They have campuses in Zanesville and also in Cambridge, and they have had a long-term program. So Marietta College, with its petroleum engineering that we have in my town, paired with some of these other training institutes, can help us deliver the talent that the oil and gas industry needs. In the regional hearings that the Workforce Development Committee had, did you find that there was more of a shared or a common goal or a unified sense for what needed to be done on workforce development, or was it pretty different in those four areas of the state? It's pretty different. We heard from a lot of the one-stops, and those were set up many, many years ago, and so these are people who've been in it, some cases, for 40 years. We heard from places like the University of Cincinnati, which is probably much more of a free market approach, and I thought that was very refreshing. When you've been doing things roughly the same way for 40 years, it might be time to revisit that and change it and take a fresh look at that. And I think just as our legislature here in our caucus is innovative and thinking in different ways, that's what I thought was the point of this workforce development. We're soliciting input, but we're also seeking ways that we can be innovative, and often that innovation is going to take place because of new industries demand it. So we can't have the same old approach that we've had for 40 years. It has to be new and different, and it has to be, just like we talked about in oil and gas, employ new technologies, try to get better at what you do, try to have metrics that make sense. And that's really what we're hungering for as legislators, is to know what works. And if we know what works, then we can reinforce that and amplify it. We were talking a little bit before the show about how we need jobs in Ohio, and you need workforce development to train the people to do those jobs. In order for people to be trained for those jobs, as you mentioned, they need a good education. There's been a lot happening in the State House in the area of education over the last few months, among them House Bill 136, which is a bill dealing with school choice. You're a supporter of that bill. Tell us a little bit about it and your constituents what that bill means. Well, I think what that bill means is a chance to have and I'm not going to go into elaborate detail because I don't know that we have enough time to do that, but it institutes a PAC scholarship, and in effect that's a voucher that parents can use to choose the school that best meets their students' need. And that's fundamentally what this is all about. When you're in the education realm, it's so urgently important that we get that right. And that's why I think that bills like House Bill 136, which puts more decision-making in the hands of parents and students, will drive quality in the public education realm and wherever education occurs. And so I was recently part of a rural school choice conference in Indiana, and what I learned from what Indiana is doing is that you can really make all the schools better by having this level of competition. If parents can vote with and students can vote with their feet, that compels the institutions that are serving them to get better and to try and find out what their constituents, frankly, what their customers need. This is all about customer service, and I believe, again, by instituting these scholarships, these vouchers, we help the parents drive that quality improvement that's needed. And many parents don't want to, they love their public schools and they don't want to leave them, and they're good schools. I don't want to in any way hurt good schools, but I want parents to have that choice, and I want schools to respond in kind to be the best that they can be. One other component of improving education, we talked about it in Senate Bill 5 and also in our budget bill, was to have performance standards for teachers. And I think that's one thing that's been missing over the last couple decades, several decades in education. Everywhere we go in the private economy, we hold people accountable. We ask them to do their best. We ask them to get better at what they do. And that's been missing in education. And I think some of these measures that we've taken to put in performance standards will improve education for our kids across the state. So that, in conjunction with this bill, I think will enable us to make quantum leaps forward in education. And that will play into effective workforce development, ultimately.
Doesn't sound like there's really been much of a summer recess. You've been pretty busy.
I'm wondering where that summer vacation comes from.
Where's that word come from? That's right. Well, what other things have you been doing in the district? What other groups have you been talking with? Are there any other legislative initiatives that have been brought to you by your constituents that you've been working on so far?
Well, one legislative initiative I'm working on, as we went through the budget, we realized there were some reductions for local government. I've been looking for ways that I can help local government reduce its costs. And one bill that we're working on, and have not yet introduced it, but it would be to lower the cost of audits for local government entities, whether it's a county, municipality, some of the other small groups that have to be accountable for their budgets. And this is something that I talked with a friend who was formerly worked for the state auditor, and he had this idea. It's called agreed upon procedures. And so if a municipality or government entity comes up clean over a certain period, then they would have a reduced audit for several years in a row. And that's a substantial savings. Sure. We're getting the facts and figures right now from the state auditor's office, but that's one bill that we would like to see go through. There's some other bills that we're looking at and studying additionally in the realm of some property issues, some energy-related issues. We have a proposed rate increase in our district from one of the electricity suppliers, and so that's of concern to my constituents. I'm doing whatever I can. I'm newly appointed to the Public Utilities Committee, so I'm going to be studying that very carefully and making sure that we do what's best for the constituents, and frankly, for those who are doing business in our district. If they can't operate cost effectively, it's going to be very hard for them to employ more people, and it is about jobs.
We've got about 2 minutes left, and as you said, you're newly appointed to the Public Utilities Committee in the House. Could you remind your constituents what committees you serve on currently then?
Sure, Mike. I'm on the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee, the Education Committee, which we discussed, and now Public Utilities. And so I'm getting up to speed on Public Utilities. The committee I'm leaving behind is Economic and Small Business Development, which is a little unfortunate, I would say, because I'm a small business guy, but I realize that when it comes to economic development, each of these committees plays a vital role. As we alluded to earlier, businesses need cost-effective energy, individuals need cost-effective electricity and energy to give them the opportunity they need to realize their dreams in Ohio. Education is vitally important. And then in agriculture and natural resources, that's the oil and gas, that's the farming. We want to improve communications, whether it's broadband, wireless, and make it possible for wherever you live, whether you're in a city or whether you're out in the country, that you can realize your small business dream, that your student can get online and do coursework or can research what they need to do to do their best in the classroom. So whatever we can do to improve that, especially in my rural part of the state, is what we're going to focus on. And it's been a very educational summer, and I'm thrilled with the committees I have because I think we're going to make a huge difference in Ohio.
We've got your contact information for your constituents at the bottom of your screen, and for all those at home, the bottom of their screen today. And Representative Thompson, of course, as always, enjoyed having you here today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And hopefully you'll come back maybe after the holidays and talk about what your first year was like.
It'd be fantastic.
Very good. Thank you. Again, you've been watching Ohio in Focus, the program that brings state government to you. We hope to see you here next time.